1/3 of the Alfred P. Murrah Building was destroyed in an instant. Authorities didn't know where to begin to catch the perpetrator. Just who was behind the deadliest attack on America, pre-9/11.
Timothy McVeigh was the man behind the deadliest attack on American soil pre-9/11. But what was the spark that ignited the flame within him? Why would a homegrown war-decorated veteran like McVeigh carry out such a heinous attack on other innocent Americans? When Timothy McVeigh was charged for blowing up the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, people who knew him in his formative years blamed everything like the Army, Persian Gulf War, different folks, groups, and ideas. Anything far away from the predominantly white, older blue-collared, pastoral communities of West New York. This is at a time when minorities, women's, and gay rights were being ushered into change. Some talked about how average of a guy McVeigh was, how it was hard to believe that this skinny kid from Pendleton could mass murder 168 people that included 19 children. Even though McVeigh had personal problems in his life, like the divorce of his parents back in '78, the bullying McVeigh faced growing up, how his antisocial behaviors and obsession for guns, gun rights, his strong opinion about the Second Amendment also grew through those formative years. According to those who knew McVeigh, the roots of his extremism weren't created in Western New York communities, but within the sinister world far away from these small towns. To the contrary, it was in the small, blue-collar town of Pendleton, New York that the seeds of anti-governmental, prejudice and racism were definitely planted in the mind of McVeigh. McVeigh became interested in guns at an early age, staring in admiration at his grandfather's .22 caliber rifle. McVeigh's grandfather would later teach him how to shoot guns, which started a lifelong obsession. By 14, McVeigh became a survival enthusiast, subscribing to survival and gun publications. He became heavily interested in stockpiling food and camping equipment to prepare for a possible nuclear attack or communists overthrowing the federal government. McVeigh held strong views about gun rights and the Second Amendment. He believed that it was the right of Americans to have the freedom to bear arms to protect themselves. Any regulation by the government on that freedom would be an act of tyranny. McVeigh also expressed resentment of women and minorities' rights as the deindustrialization continued to hit the Buffalo area. But he wasn't alone in his ideology, especially in the small community of Pendleton, growing increasingly tired of watching the decline to the area. As the blue-collar jobs gave way to other job opportunities requiring more skills than the residents of these areas had, young men like McVeigh grew increasingly angry about the changes they were witnessing. Since a young man, McVeigh was always preparing to fight an apocalyptic war alone. Practiced shooting, also making and exploding bombs at his survivalist bunker. As I mentioned before, McVeigh subscribed to a lot of magazine publications. He'd found the Turner Diaries through the Soldiers of Fortune magazine and became obsessed with the book. The Turner Diaries are a fictional book written by neo-Nazi William L. Pierce. Its plot is about a character named Earl Turner who took part in a violent overthrow of the government and the systematic killing of Jewish and other non-white people.
Like cases like this one? Hit the like button and subscribe for more.
McVeigh was hooked on this book, quoting it to people he'd share the same views with. McVeigh also had thoughts about what if one man could cripple the government. If one man could, just like Earl Turner, who took down the system in the book. At a string of dead-end jobs, his prejudices were further cemented with microaggressive moments, making or listening to racist comments and stereotypes about minorities that were being shared amongst the group for a laugh or to prove a point. McVeigh started to feel stuck in his small town, and in May of '88 he would enlist in the United States Army. I guess all that training paid off for McVeigh. He was a damn good soldier in the Army, undergoing basic training at Fort Benning, which is where he met one of the co-conspirators, Terry Nichols. We'll dive more into Nichols later on, as he also plays a key role in the planning and other things that helped to execute the bombing. He was assigned to the 1st Infantry Division of Fort Riley, Kansas, becoming a sergeant and gunner on a Fighting Bradley vehicle. But McVeigh's prejudices would later overshadow his honor. There were reports that McVeigh would assign the black subordinates the dirtiest work details, which was demoralizing not only to these men, but the platoon as well. His views would further get him in trouble when he was reprimanded for purchasing a White Power t-shirt at a KKK rally. This was in opposition to some of the black servicemen wearing Black Power t-shirts. But in his spare time on the base, McVeigh would read about snipers, firearms, and explosives just as he did as a teen. Despite different incidents of racist microaggressions McVeigh boldly put out there, he was still put on an acceleration track to promotion by Uncle Sam. McVeigh's skills got him called to combat in 91's Persian Gulf War. He won several medals for his heroism. But somewhere in this stretch of time done in the Gulf, McVeigh's outlook would change.
I went over there hyped up, just like everyone else. Not only is Saddam evil, all Iraqis are evil. What I experienced, though, was an entirely different ballgame.
He started questioning why America was even in Iraq. Furthermore, he began to question why was he there helping the government crack down on these people in their land. He felt more and more angry and disgusted with the federal government's role in the Gulf War. McVeigh signed up for Special Forces training at Fort Bragg to try and make a career out of the military. He wouldn't make the cut for the Special Forces units. McVeigh was over with the experiences from the military. He returned to West New York at the end of 91. Back in New York, August 92, the world watched as it peered into a small cabin near Naples, Idaho, where a family of white separatists headed by Randy Weaver, another ex-Army veteran turned anti-government militant survivalist, refused to surrender as authorities surrounded his home for 11 days, resulting in the killing of his 14-year-old son Sam Weaver and wife Vicki Weaver. The incident at Ruby Ridge sparked an outrage amongst the far-right community, who felt like the government had sent a strong message that nobody's rights mattered when it came to Uncle Sam. So, if you weren't living the way the government wanted you to live, not prescribing to the type of Christianity the government wanted you to, and if you were a gun owner, the government could come and take away your life, no matter if you were defending your property and person. It was widely speculated that, because Randy Weaver chose to be a white separatist, moving his family to isolation, and because the Weavers were fundamental Christians who believed in being heavily armed, a family that would defend their rights and beliefs without a moment's notice. This was why it's believed the government descended on the family inside that tiny cabin. But was this really why the ATF became interested in Randy Weaver? Actually, it was in 1989 when he used to attend Aryan Nation recruitment meetings at a nearby Aryan Nation compound. It was here that Weaver began talking to a gentleman whom he thought shared the same ideals as himself. But this gentleman turned out to be an undercover ATF agent checking out the compound. Weaver got around to telling the agent that he could sell him 2 shotguns, and was later caught on tape saying he could provide 4 to 5 illegal shotguns a week. And by 90, Weaver faced felony gun charges in connection with the transaction. Far-right propaganda at the time claimed that the government came for the Weavers due to their religion, their guns, and the way they chose to live. But the truth of the matter is that on August 21st, 1992, federal agents were trying to pick Weaver up on a bench warrant after failing to appear for firearm charges. Weaver refused to surrender, choosing to stay at home with his family. Federal agents were checking out the land and property when they came upon 14-year-old Sam Weaver and Kevin Harris. Shots were exchanged as the family dog and 14-year-old Sam Weaver were shot and killed. Harris, who was a family friend, returned fire, killing Deputy U.S. Marshal William Deegan. On the morning of August 22, 1992, by this time hostage rescue team and FBI were involved with the situation. As snipers observed the cabin, they were instructed to shoot any adult male coming out of the cabin armed. Authorities have come across people who held the same ideologies as the Weavers held in the past, or those who are enraged by the actions of their government and would go to sometimes murderous lengths to prove a point. People like Richard Butler with his white supremacy ideals and warped sense of Christianity, who went on to become the leader of the Aryan Nation. and Bob Matthews, who wanted to start a war with the government, also inspired by the Turner Diaries, to form a group called The Order. The gang terrorized the Pacific Northwest area between 1983 to 1984. Members of the gang were implicated in the murder of radio talk show host Alan Berg in '84. The gang also funded themselves by robbing armored trucks and is infamous for robbing a Brinks armored truck in '84. So, as you see, authorities have dealt with these types of people before, those who go to the extreme over their beliefs. And U.S. Deputy and family of William Deegan lost a good guy. Authorities felt like Weaver could be another Bob Matthews, and they wouldn't be taking that chance. So on that morning, when given the orders to shoot any adult male exiting the cabin armed, the snipers were going to do just that. As I mentioned before, the Weavers believed in their Second Amendment rights to the fullest with firearms close in tow. Randy Weaver, Kevin Harris, and Vicky Weaver decide to go check on Sam's body placed in the shed. As they exited the cabin armed and began to walk toward the cabin, a shot was fired, striking Randy Weaver in the shoulder. The trio start running back toward the cabin. Another shot wounds Kevin Harris, but strikes Vicky Weaver in the face as her body dropped to the ground as soon as they got to the cabin door. The Aryan Nation members from the neighboring compound came to Ruby Ridge to protest, as other far-right idealists from around the world saw this as an innocent family ripped apart by the tyrannical government. Ruby Ridge was resolved by civilian negotiators after 11 days. This was the first time the far-right movement became mainstream in this way. It was scary how these people saw themselves in Randy Weaver, and how the incident at Ruby Ridge became a calling card for the far-right movement. Stay in tune for the next episode and subscribe so you know when we release new content. Thanks for watching.